So right now, House Committee is preparing to hear from witnesses with first-hand knowledge of the deadly attack in Benghazi, Libya. This week's hearing expected to focus on Republican claims the State Department massaged public statements to eliminate or play down the likelihood of terrorism. Last year, a group of armed attackers stormed the compound on September 11th. 4 Americans died, including Ambassador Chris Stevens. And joining me right now is California Congressman Adam Schiff. He's a member of the House Intelligence Committee. So, sir, explain what we expect to get out of this, and what is the reaction to hearing the calls from the right that there was a massaged message that came out from the Obama administration?
Well, I'm not really sure what to expect, Thomas, except if you look at the batting record for the Government Reform Committee, they're batting about 0 for 10. Probably the top 10 allegations they've made, none of them have borne any fruit, not just vis-a-vis Benghazi, but the whole host of issues they've attacked the administration over. But just looking at Benghazi, the original theory of Chairman Iss's committee and some of the other Republican spokespeople on this issue was that the White House actively involved to try to change the talking points because they didn't want it to look like a terror attack. Well, that was investigated, and actually it turned out the intelligence agencies changed the talking points, not the White House. So now they come up with a new theory. Now they're trying to blame the State Department. And you can call me a little skeptical, but now that it's post-presidential election, maybe they're not going after the White House so much. Maybe they're going after someone who may run for the White House, and that is former Secretary Clinton. But I'll be very interested to see just what these so-called whistleblowers are blowing the whistle on, because frankly, the director of the CIA, former Director Petraeus, the director of the National Intelligence Agency, General Clapper, they both initially thought this began as a protest. So unless the chairman is saying they're part of a vast conspiracy involving the State Department, it's hard to see how this makes much sense.
Sir, as the president was pressed in the press conference that he had last week about this and whether or not there was an intimidation factor going into whether or not State Department officials felt pigeonholed into not speaking out, we have this transcript that's just been released to NBC News from the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. It's an excerpt of an interview with U.S. diplomat Gregory Hicks, and it's from April 11th, so from last month, just saying the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee releasing this partial transcript of an interview, Hicks telling investigators that a team of Special Forces troops was ordered not to fly from Tripoli to Benghazi during the attack by U.S. Special Operations Command South Africa. Hicks is scheduled to testify at this open hearing on Benghazi attacks on Wednesday morning, but he says if he was able to, he believes if the U.S. had been able to scramble a fighter or aircraft in that area, that things would have turned out much differently. So how important do you think that the diplomat Gregory Hicks's testimony is going to be on Wednesday?
Well, we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if the kind of leak in advance is more sensational than the testimony ends up being. After all, Admiral Mullen and Ambassador Pickering, who led this accountability review board, that talked to dozens and dozens of witnesses and went through thousands of pages of materials. Their conclusion was that the decisions whether to intervene militarily, what was capable of being done within the time frame, were all done realistically, that they were done appropriately. So I would have a lot more confidence, I think, in their thorough work product than what we're seeing in some excerpts of a self-proclaimed whistleblower, but we'll see what they have to say tomorrow.
But you would admit that there are certain and major lessons to be learned out of the failings that happened in Benghazi, and that there were missteps that occurred.
Oh, absolutely. And this Accountability Review Board found a lot of changes the State Department needed to make, and errors in judgment within the department. They made a whole host of recommendations, and the State Department has been in the process of implementing those recommendations, and now the IG is going to look at how that implementation is going. So absolutely, the State Department, I think, has recognized that it had a lot of failings in its security, probably not just in Benghazi, but in other dangerous posts as well. And we ought to look in to make sure that those recommendations are followed through. So no one's saying that there weren't mistakes here. Clearly there were, but the idea that there's some vast conspiracy emanating from the top of the State Department, which was formerly emanating from the White House, which was formerly emanating from who knows where. At this point, I just don't buy it. I think it's more of the smoke rather than heat coming out of the Government Reform Committee.
Congressman Adam Schiff, sir, thanks for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
New information in the investigation.